whatever.
Okay, let's pull it out together.
Okay. Don't say anything if you see it first.
I won't. Neither can you.
Stop, because this is the twist the internet completely skipped. The headlines claiming Justin Baldoni discussed private or inappropriate matters with Blake Lively leave out the most important detail: context, according to the legal filings. The conversation took place inside Blake's home before she officially joined the film. During a casual and open discussion about her pregnancy, Ryan Reynolds and staff members were present, and the topic centered on a common new parent concern, making it a normal family conversation rather than anything secretive or unprofessional. Stripped of its surroundings, the story sounds scandalous, but when placed back into reality, the accusation collapses. Context doesn't just matter here, it changes everything. Justin bought the rights to it, ends with us with the clear intention of directing the film himself. But almost immediately, the power dynamics began to shift. Script rewrites multiplied, new voices entered the process, and external pressure from A-list connections intensified. At the same time, media narratives started forming that quietly framed Justin as the obstacle before production had even properly begun. This conveniently positioned someone else as the solution, allowing leverage to build while the director's authority steadily weakened from day one. What should have been a collaborative process slowly turned into a struggle for control. The real plot becomes clear when you examine the texts, the so-called friendly advice from outsiders, and the moment the balance of power tilted long before cameras ever rolled. That moment came when Justin took a call from director Sean Levy, a close friend of Blake and Ryan. In his deposition, Justin described the call as a course correction, but in practical terms, it meant an external figure advising the director on how to manage his own lead actor. This wasn't a standard industry exchange, it was a calculated use of influence. After that call, the receipts begin to align. On May 1st, producer Alex Saxes texted Jaime Heath, warning that Blake's advice was incorrect and that Blake was now effectively directing the film. Daily rewrites, endless approval loops, lost time, and mounting confusion followed, clear indicators of a production losing its footing. Control slipped away piece by piece. This wasn't the result of a single conversation or misunderstanding. Feeling boxed in and increasingly vulnerable, Justin and Jamie began documenting everything, including recorded calls with Levy, WME, and others, as small issues were repeatedly inflated into narratives capable of causing serious, career-level damage. Levy's guidance effectively steered Justin toward conceding more script changes, granting more input, and surrendering more authority, while Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively continued weighing in behind the scenes. The hierarchy on set visibly shifted. Crew members noticed it, producers felt it, and the director's voice gradually moved from firm to faint. Once credibility starts to crack, every decision is second-guessed, and collaboration quietly turns into containment. That's when the accelerant entered the picture. Alex Saxes. She was a producer Justin trusted and personally brought into the project, yet she quickly became the loudest whisperer on set. Her history at June Pictures with partner Andrew Duncan, who faced multiple harassment claims in 2017, left behind a culture of fear, control, and reputation management that, according to the record, followed her into It Ends With Us. The texts reveal that the push to replace Justin began almost immediately. Alex told executive Angie Gianni that a new director was needed, and when Angie resisted, the pressure didn't stop, it intensified. Messages began reframing Justin and Jaime as narcissistic and dangerous, effectively rewriting history through repetition. Say it often enough, and perception shifts, regardless of the actual work being done. With Blake's star power, Sony's involvement, and constant rewrites, Alex's influence ballooned. Daily script changes, shifting approvals, and mounting delays began bleeding money. And in Hollywood, time is oxygen, especially for a producer. Yet her messages read less like crisis management and more like positioning for top PGA credit and creative control, framing the director as the obstacle in order to seize the wheel. The pattern was unmistakable: undercut the director, elevate the star, and flood the zone with manufactured concern. Meanwhile, recordings captured key moments, including the January 4th confrontation and the disputed claim that Ryan Reynolds saved a collapsing production. That detail matters, because when a director starts recording conversations, it's a sign something fundamental is broken. Justin and Jaime documented calls with Levy, agency representatives, and studio executives to preserve clarity as minor misunderstandings were repeatedly inflated into narratives capable of ending careers. The constant interventions, strategic messaging, and outside pressure weren't random, they were systematic. Authority was chipped away piece by piece, credibility eroded deliberately, and the power structure was reshaped in real time. The chaos wasn't organic, it was engineered, as star influence, PR framing, and producer leverage converged to box the director in while masking the true story. When you connect the dots across texts, calls, and legal filings, a consistent pattern emerges. Leverage applied at every level, influence wielded to control perception, and Justin's attempts to maintain creative authority challenged at every turn. Yet, despite the mounting pressure, Justin documented everything with precision. continued to lead the production, and fought to protect the integrity of the film. In doing so, he unintentionally revealed a pattern of calculated power plays designed to confuse audiences, elevate the stars, and distort the factual record. What emerges is a masterclass in subtle but relentless takeover tactics, something that only becomes visible when you follow the receipts, track the chain of interventions, and watch how a normal production environment was gradually reframed into a narrative portraying the director as incompetent and dangerous. This is why context, documentation, and scrutiny matter, because they are the only tools capable of cutting through headlines, spin, and carefully orchestrated leaks. They weren't recording conversations to create a podcast or fuel drama. They were building a paper trail. And when you run that trail forward, the timeline tells a clear story of escalation and orchestration. April brought Levy's so-called course-correcting call. On May 1st, producer texts warned that Blake was effectively directing the movie, with daily rewrites and Justin's authority steadily slipping away. By January 4th, the pressure cooker finally exploded in a face-to-face meeting where, according to Justin's sworn testimony, Reynolds confronted him, declared the script a disaster, and claimed he had personally saved it. This wasn't a note or a suggestion, it was a victory statement. That distinction matters because the power lies in optics and leverage. When a Hollywood star, who is also the lead actress's husband, publicly positions himself as the savior of a failing script, every prior headline portraying the director as chaotic suddenly appears validated. Ownership of the IP and the established chain of command become irrelevant. The narrative hardens into something simple and effective. Director bad, our team good. Reynolds' camp pushed for a slick, star-driven promotional strategy, while Justin advocated for a different approach, using the film to spotlight domestic violence resources, partner with organizations like No More, and donate proceeds. That approach is brand safe, but it clashes with an industry machine that demands a single, centralized voice controlling the narrative. When Justin centered advocacy and survivor support, it was reframed as an attack on Blake, even though it amounted to helping victims. And if a real smear campaign existed, there would be quotes, interviews, or posts pointing directly to it. Instead, the filings argued that his advocacy hurt her image because it conflicted with their preferred marketing message. That distinction matters, because it reveals the true motive. This isn't retaliation, it's a fight over narrative control. When someone wants a director removed, the process is rarely loud at first. It happens through steady erosion. On It Ends With Us, that erosion appeared as constant script rewrites, approval bottlenecks routed through Blake, and helpful notes that slowly morphed into daily homework. Producer chats plainly stated, Blake is now directing the movie. This is bad. That isn't collaboration, it's control. Bad. That isn't collaboration, it's control. As labels began flying behind the scenes, Alex repeatedly described Justin and Jaime as narcissistic and dangerous. Language that through repetition made ordinary production stress appear pathological. Normal frictions were reframed as warning signs. An annoyed tone, a sharp note, a scheduling pushage was quietly elevated into alleged harassment, keeping the director off balance and making every decision feel like a potential trap. Take the rooftop scene. Justin says Blake pushed for it, but when it ultimately didn't serve the story, that refusal became a fuse. Levy's advice to concede and hand the moment to Morse flipped the power pyramid entirely. Ryan's input began arriving directly on script pages. Crew whispers spread, and while the director's chair still existed, its authority slowly drained out. Throughout this, Justin continued documenting calls with Levy, WME, and other stakeholders not to protect himself, but to protect the project. Yet those records were later reframed as paranoia instead of precaution. A classic form of gaslighting meant to punish the very paper trail that revealed the pattern. The result was a working environment where Justin was forced to walk on eggshells. Every line he gave questioned, every boundary he set framed as hostility. All the while, rewrites kept stacking up and the clock kept burning, until the now infamous 17-point agreement entered the picture and fundamentally changed the balance of power. That agreement granted Blake leverage over cuts, transforming what should have been creative collaboration into contractual control. In black and white. It required her sign-off before release, placing a literal hand on the brake. Above the edit bay, Justin testified that a nuclear PR threat loomed, an implicit warning that if he didn't concede, he could be publicly portrayed as a monster. Every creative choice became a calculation: protect the integrity of the film or risk a damaging headline. And the pattern repeated. Levy's calls framed as guidance, Alex whispering that a new director was needed, daily rewrites, snowballing. By the time the film required decisive editing leadership, the 17-point agreement functioned like a trapdoor, consolidating leverage, control, and coercion into every creative move. What this reveals is not organic chaos, but systematic erosion. Justin's authority wasn't lost in a single moment, it was dismantled step by step. While the public narrative was carefully shaped to benefit Blake and Ryan, PR pressure, contractual leverage, and strategic messaging converged to turn routine director-producer disagreements into manufactured power plays, masking control as collaboration, and leaving the director framed as the problem in a story that had been engineered long before the headlines appeared. And when you follow the receipts, the timeline, the texts, the calls, and the shifting approvals, the deliberate orchestration of influence, narrative control, and coercion becomes impossible to ignore. What emerges is a clear pattern of manipulation that transformed ordinary production stress into leverage. Small creative disagreements were reframed as conflict. Advocacy was recast as hostility, and every step Justin took to protect the film and his team was repackaged to diminish him. The public only ever saw the headlines. What they didn't see was the meticulous documentation and the nuanced reality underneath it. Behind the scenes, the shift from the director's chair to the signature line tells the real story. You can argue a creative note, but you can't argue a contractual clause, and the impact of that shift is simple but devastating. The film's tone, pacing, and story begin bending toward whoever holds veto power. That person can keep pushing until the cut reflects their vision or until the director gives up. And if the director resists, the outrage machine activates. That's why the Justin is chaotic storyline was so useful. If the director appears unstable, then contract-based control suddenly looks like responsibility rather than domination. But the receipts tell a different story. They show authority being systematically engineered away, with the contract delivering the final blow. That process culminated in the mask slipping on January 4th, during the hands-on meeting where, according to Justin's sworn testimony, Ryan Reynolds confronted him and finally said the quiet part out loud. The script was a disaster and he had saved it. That wasn't guidance, it was a coronation. It mapped the true line of power and exposed who wanted control and when. When connected to the broader timeline, everything aligns. An article about Ryan's uncredited script work surfaces. The rooftop scene disputes escalates. Pressure intensifies. Justin's partner, Steve, feared the disaster narrative would permanently brand Justin and urged him to respond defensively, not to spin, but to survive. At the same time, others were already positioning themselves safely on the other side of the fence. The sequence fits perfectly with Levy's earlier call that softened Justin's authority and set the stage for what followed. What looked chaotic from the outside was, in fact, tightly coordinated from within. Alex's texts quietly seeded narcissist whispers into the crew, while daily rewrites made the director appear indecisive. That groundwork set the stage for the final victory speech. "We saved your mess," which explains why the ensuing PR storm worked so effectively. Once the public believes Ryan rescued a failing film, the earlier sidelining of Justin is retroactively reframed as noble intervention. A takeover becomes heroism, and Justin is left holding the grenade pin. Say nothing, and the disaster narrative sticks. Say anything and it's labeled a smear. That isn't collaboration, it's a trap. Meanwhile, Blake's side repeatedly claims a smear campaign, yet the receipts simply aren't there. No interviews, no posts, no emails showing a direct attack on the allegations and implications. When proof fails to materialize, the strategy shifts to spoliation, a procedural swing meant to stall rather than substantiate. As the noise clears, the real dispute comes into focus. Marketing and messaging. Justin's plan centered the film on directing audiences to domestic violence resources, partnering with No More, creating advanced materials, and routing hundreds of thousands of dollars in proceeds toward survivor support. Blake and Ryan's camp, by contrast, pushed for a glossy star-first rollout, when Justin's advocacy didn't align with that vision. It was reframed as an attack on Blake's image, not because it was harmful, but because it wasn't theirs. To stack the pieces and the pattern becomes unmistakable. A pre-hire conversation stripped of context to make Justin appear creepy. Sean Levy's advice subtly bending the hierarchy. Alex Sax's texts labeling Justin and Jaime as narcissistic and dangerous, shaping crew perception. Daily rewrites draining authority in real time. A 17-point agreement granting Blake leverage over cuts. And finally, the January 4th declaration, "I saved it." This was never about one awkward conversation or a sharp note on set. It was about who controls the narrative, both on screen and online. Where a director who refuses to disappear is villainized and advocacy outside a preferred brand is relabeled as retaliation, the case keeps circling back to the same truth. Justin may have been inexperienced. He was certainly human, but the chaos surrounding him wasn't random. It was engineered. And once control of the cut, the press, and the pitch is consolidated, you don't need to win on facts, you just need to win the frame. That leaves the audience with the only question that really matters: who truly held the power, and who ultimately paid the price?